Hello and welcome back. Now, for this episode, we're going to be doing some awesome cooking with Rich. It actually is going to be a special one because it is kind of a family famous recipe of our pumpkin bread, which you should be really excited for this because it's really amazing stuff. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about gatekeeping. The reason why I bring this up is because gatekeeping, well, there's different thoughts to it. For most people, or many people anyway, think that gatekeeping could be defined as when someone takes it upon themselves to decide who does or does not have access to rights to a community or identity. Now, while this isn't exactly true, some of the feelings of that tends to apply to the more modern usage of gatekeeping. The Oxford English Dictionary actually defines a gatekeeper as a person, system, etc., that decides whether somebody or something will be allowed to reach a particular place or person. Now, gatekeeping is not necessarily a bad thing. Usually when we tend to use it in modern instances, it tends to be a bad thing, but sometimes gatekeeping is actually really good. There are actually a number of professions that use gatekeeping as a way to make sure that only qualified people can do the thing. When you think of professions with gatekeeping, you're thinking of like doctors, lawyers, barbers, beauticians, realtors, general contractors, plumbers, electricians. They all have to prove that they can be up to a certain standard before they are allowed to be a thing, which that's good. I tend to be talking about cultural gatekeeping, or kind of culinary gatekeeping. Now, cultural gatekeeping is its own little thing. When you think of it like in a nerd culture, where it tends to be more prevalent, gatekeeping refers to fans within a community, usually older or more experienced fans, imposing standards upon the newcomer fans that must be met before being accepted into the community, which was something that was very much rampant a while ago. There's still some of it now, unfortunately. This actually makes it really hard for women and people of color to enter the geeky space, in this case, because as soon as they enter into the space, they are met with more than a little skepticism, and they pretty much are quizzed incessantly by the gatekeeper fans, and they're given all these ridiculous quiz questions. And if they can't answer all of these quiz questions, then they risk being labeled a fake fan or a fake geek girl, or in some cases not even just allowed to be part of that community space, which is stupid and sucks and is just terrible. Luckily, geekdom has been a lot more inclusive of everybody to try to let everybody who likes something and be part of the group, which is overall a good thing. I will say not everything is better, but it's pretty good. I'm also a little embarrassed to say that this is true also of like magic and magicians. This is a thing where magic was always kind of a boys' club of sorts, which sucks and is stupid. When I used to go to a magic club up in New Hampshire a great many years ago, there's only one woman in the group. Now, I don't think that's necessarily because anyone was trying to not welcome women into the group. It's just not very many women felt welcome into magic. Luckily, that's been changing a lot over the last decade or two. So, yeah, just kind of so you can be aware. The reason why I bring this up is because I think of culinary gatekeeping, which I think is ridiculous. Not sharing a recipe for most reasons I don't get. I think it's stupid and dumb. Now, if you are using this recipe to make money, if you are a business, if you are a person that's like owning a bakery, I get it. I get you have a special recipe for stuff. It's really good. You don't want... That's fine. That's fine. I'm talking about people who have like their secret recipe of something, whether it's a secret, like a family recipe, or their own personal recipe of a thing. Now, if you can cook and you can make something really, really well, maybe if you want to be the one to make it for someone or to introduce them to it, I can kind of see that a little bit. But if you really love the thing that you're making, and oh my god, this brings me so much joy and it's wonderful, and then you don't want to share that information with other people. Like, other people still have to do the work, they still have to buy the materials and everything, but man, this brings me a lot of joy. I don't want anybody else to have this joy. That's stupid. I can think of at least one case in which there's a thing that was spoken very highly about, and that sounds good. I've never tried anything like that. I'd be willing to give that a shot. Here, give me the recipe, and I'll like, oh no, I can't. No, I'm not allowed. It's not a thing that I can do, and so I just can't experience it. That being said, here we are. This is my family's famous pumpkin bread. This is any time that, as I was growing up, anytime we were going to some place for a holiday thing, a Thanksgiving thing, a Christmas thing, or whatever, Mom would bake a metric crap ton of this pumpkin bread and bring it to places, and the family would get it, and it's, oh my God, amazing. And this is absolutely amazing. So I would learn to make this stuff, and now sometimes when I would go to work, I would bring some of this stuff and hand some of it out, and oh, it is famous. It is a thing that is gotten so much fame and prestige, and people are like, you brought pumpkin bread? Oh my God, you brought pumpkin bread. Can I just, where is it? Can I just have, look, how much can I have? I've actually, there's someone that I can think of. You know who you are. I don't think they watch the show, but yeah, some people know who this is. Where I would give them like a whole mini loaf of this thing, or I'd give them like 2 in a bag, would open up the bag, would pull out a mini loaf of this pumpkin bread, and just start taking large bites out of it until it was gone. Just, not even like a sitting. There's no cutlery, there's no anything. It's just pushing it down his gullet until it is gone every time that I would do it. So, I am going to teach you how to make the famous pumpkin bread. Why? Because I love you, and I want you to be happy, and I want you to have my joy. So, let's cook some pumpkin bread, and I'll get suited up and ready, and we'll throw a hat over this wonderful, glorious mane to keep the hair out of the food. Alright, let's get to baking this awesome pumpkin bread. It's spooky season, so I'm going to be rocking a spooky apron today. In order to make this, you're going to need a few things. The first one, before I forget, is some sort of pan you're going to bake it in. Either a couple of loaf pans. I've actually got one of these great silicone 6-part mini loaf pans, which I tend to use on the regular. 3 1/3 cups flour. 2 teaspoons of baking soda. 1.5 teaspoons of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of submarine fuel, baking powder. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of cloves. And seriously, that's like all the seasoning you really need. 2/3 cup of shortening. I tend to use butter flavored Crisco sticks, which, oh God, it works like, but that makes sense actually. 2 2/3 cup sugar. A total of 4 eggs. No, I don't always juggle them. Yes, I do. A 16-ounce can of pumpkin, which is smaller than this. It's like a regular can. I make a lot of pumpkin stuff, so I buy a lot of pumpkin. 2/3 of a cup of water. Kungaloosh. And 2 of the biggest mixing bowls you got. Okay, the reason we're using 2 mixing bowls is because we're actually going to separate the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients, and we're going to mix those separately before we combine everything together. That's how you make sure you're going to have it smooth. Make sure to put the wet ingredients in the largest of the bowls and then mix the dry ingredients in the smaller of the bowls, because we're going to end up mixing the dry into the wet. It's going to get pretty big by the end. I highly recommend that you mix these in the order that I do. Add in your shortening. Next, add in your sugar. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute, Rich, we said we were going to do the wet ingredients together. Sugar is very much a powder. Well, guess what? The granules of sugar, actually are considered a wet ingredient in pretty much all of baking. And honestly, it works so much better if you do that. Add in your eggs. Honestly, at this point, you can actually start mixing up those liquid ingredients because you're going to need to try to get it as smooth as you can. The graininess, the granulation of the sugar actually works to help break apart that shortening, which doesn't always like to break down once everything gets really fluid. Sometimes you got to take some time to knock the blocks of shortening out of your whisk that you're using, but just do your best to get that into just a fatty, sugary slurry. Oh yeah, like that. Honestly, the work that you put into getting this consistency to the smooth consistency that you want is going to set the tone for the entire pumpkin bread. So if you're going to put a couple extra seconds into mixing something, do it now. Next, add your pumpkin and your water. And those are your liquid ingredients. So go ahead, mix those together, get it nice and smooth. Oh yeah, just like that. That is awesome. Next, you mix your dry ingredients in this one, and it almost doesn't matter what order you put them in. Your flour, your baking soda, your salt, that baking powder, and finally your flavor, your cinnamon, and your cloves. Now take that heap of dry ingredients and also mix that, and really try to mix it well, because there's a lot of really important things that you really want dispersed through everything. Everything from the baking powder and the baking soda, which is actually going to help it rise. If that's only clumped together in one spot, then not everything's going to rise, and some spots might rise too much. There's stuff like the cinnamon and the cloves that, if you don't mix that up, then not all the bread's going to be spiced, and it's dry, it's easy, mix it up. Now this is the point in which I usually like to turn on my oven. We're going to turn it to 350 degrees. If your oven takes a little bit longer to heat up, then maybe start it a little bit earlier. Next, we are going to take the dry ingredients, we're going to mix them into the wet ingredients, and you're going to want to do it a little bit at a time. If you dump the whole thing in there at once, it is a royal pain to try to mix this stuff, and it doesn't mix quite so well. So you put in a little bit, give it a mix. Once you can see that's in there, you add a little bit more, and the more you do this, the more that's going to thicken up. We're about halfway through. It's already getting nice and thick. Keep on going. We're doing pretty good. Let's add the rest of it. And that right there is that color and the consistency that we are absolutely looking for. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be pouring that into our loaf pans. You can do either the 2 bigger loaf pans, or I'm going to be using the 6 right there. This stuff really likes to stick to the bowl, so grab yourself a scraper to help get that out of there as you pour. Also, you are going to want to spray some nonstick spray into your pan. Get the sides, get the bottoms. You don't really want this stuff sticking. This could be a tough pour, but just kind of do your best. I always try to work from the back because it's easier to go from the back and then move to the front. Sometimes I will purposefully underestimate the amount to put in each pan. That way when I have that little bit left at the end, I can look to see, okay, which ones of these did I not fill as much, and fill it in. Once your oven is hot, go ahead and toss those in and bake them for the directions say between 45 and 70 minutes, which is a huge range. Honestly, I pretty much cook them for 45 minutes and they end up being done. But what you're going to want to do is the toothpick test. If you haven't baked anything like this before, the toothpick test is the ultimate way to know if it's done. You take a toothpick or a skewer or some other kind of wooden wonder, and basically when you think it might be done, you stick it into kind of the deepest part of the bread, the thing that you're baking. And when you pull that out, if it's got wet stuff like batter, clearly we haven't cooked it, then it's not done and you need to keep cooking it. But if you pull it out and it's clean, sometimes it can have little crumbs on there, but not like this. If it comes out clean, then it's done. All right, it has just passed the toothpick test. I actually use some of these wooden skewers because they go nice and deep and I can be sure they're fully cooked. Since it passed, we can get that out of the oven. And yes, check those out. That is the pumpkin bread as it comes out of the oven in all of its gorgeousness. And so we're just going to let that cool. In a second, I'm actually going to take those off and I'm going to put them on some cooling racks. They got it right over there. If you don't have cooling racks, you can probably leave them out on your stove, kind of like this, especially if you have a gas range like this. It'll help to get them cooled off nice and quick as well. Yes, they are wonderful and perfect and delicious, and it is the greatest thing. If you have had this before, you know exactly what this is, and you would be so excited to be me right now, to be right here. You can just cut pieces off and enjoy them as it is. You can put some butter on it. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. If you have not had this before, oh my God, if you bake at all, you need to bake this because it is some of the best stuff ever. So thank you for coming to hang out with me and learning the secret of this amazing pumpkin bread. Make it, enjoy it, you'll love it. While you're here, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom. We've got our Facebook, Rich Does a Thing. You can find us there. You can find us on Instagram, on Snap to Chat, the Insta Twitter. Of course, you can support us on the Patreon. We've got a Discord server. Pretty much everywhere that you can find a thing, you can find our thing. Bye.